Don't ever let somebody tell you can't do something. You got a dream, you gotta protect it. You want something, go get it. Period.
What's up, guys? Jay Bandy here with episode 33 of the For the Love podcast. We're back. 2021. Took a little break the last couple months to kind of get myself together and get ready for the new year, especially with this year being so crazy. Today I have a buddy that I met on Facebook, saw his counseling and therapy group that he has in practice. And I'm very interested in all these things. I think it's a big reason why the world is the way it is our personalities. So my buddy Shane, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
How do you pronounce your last name? I don't like to say people's names wrong. So is it Man? You just say Man?
I appreciate that. It's Mahon, like
Mahon.
kind of, yeah, two
Gotcha.
syllables.
Okay, so you have a practice called Anchored Counseling out of where exactly is that?
Yeah, so it's Anchored Soul Counseling. It's in North Haven, Connecticut.
Right. Okay. Yeah, looking at your I like how your website looks, man. It's very, very very warm and welcoming. And I think that that's something that is very important for people that want to take that step into therapy, because it's obviously scary for those that take that step. So how old are you at the current time?
How old am I?
Yeah.
I'm 30.
Okay. I got 5 years on you, my man. Damn. So you basically tell me how you decided this was going to be your career, because obviously I see a lot of people struggling with figuring out what they want to do with their life and what their passion might be or what they want as a career. How did you come about doing this?
Yeah, so it definitely took some exploring. You know, I was kind of lost as a teenager, just wanted to party and have fun, and that kind of carried into my early 20s. You know, my parents always told me I should become a teacher so I could have summers off, and that sounded good. And then I realized I wasn't the best with kids and teaching, because I, did some like side teaching things at church and stuff, and really hated it. But I always knew I liked talking to people, and I find that people, sometimes even strangers, when I'm talking to them, they just start opening up and like telling me their deep, dark secrets. And that always felt really good, to be like a safe place for other people. And I think for a lot of my life, I didn't have that. So being able to give that back to other people was really empowering for me. And just did some exploring when I got into college, took some intro classes, and I took an intro to social work class. And they talked about, we had this guy come in from DCF, Department of Children and Families, and he just talked about the job and how cool it was and how great it was. And I was like, I'm going to work there. So then, fast forward a couple years, I got an internship at DCF in Meriden, and I was able to work there for, it's probably about 9 months, a paid internship. Got some experience working with people that were really in a very different, like, socioeconomic kind of place in the world than I was. I mean, I grew up kind of middle class, upper middle class, didn't really want for anything. Always
Have you
had
seen
food.
that before? Were you ever exposed to that before you got into that?
Not really. I mean, I live in a, suburban area, didn't really go to inner cities, there wasn't a lot of diversity. It was pretty much like I lived in a pretty whitewashed community. So at this point, I started to become exposed to, people of different backgrounds and ethnicities and colors. And it was a pretty incredible experience. There's a lot of training. Once I was in DCF, they give you a lot of training, a lot of cultural diversity trainings and exposures, because you're really going into people's lives as an authority, and most people are afraid of you. You walk in and it's like, you're going to take my kids, and I learned very quickly how not to interact with people. I would see, some approaches that people would take, and it was very like authoritarian, and people don't respond well to that. So that's the point in time when I really started to develop like this mentality of connecting with people and treating them like people, right? Because you get the report and it would say all this negative stuff, and you think, oh my gosh, this person's a monster. And I remember there's this one case I had, um, probably about 7 or 8 years ago at this time. And the way they described this person, it was like, they're like, you need to go with someone else. Like, he's violent, he's scary, like, and then I went there and the guy was like wearing an apron cooking dinner and he's like, oh, come on in. And I was like, what? And I just talked to him
Yeah.
and I treated him like a person, but the other person I was with did not.
Yeah.
And he was vicious towards this other person with me, but he was really kind to me. And, that's when I kind of realized, okay, like if you treat people like people,
Yeah.
you're gonna, get a better result. It's like you get more flies. It's an old time saying, get more flies with honey than vinegar.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
And
funny.
it really is true.
It's funny you say that because I was a cop for 14 years of my life, and my main thing was always to try to treat people the way I wanted to be treated, and never really change my personality towards what was going on out there in the world. Be myself, and then, you know, I will dictate what happens after I give you respect. If I give you respect, and then you don't want to give it back to me, then I might have to take a different route or whatever. But I always try to come off during my career with giving people the same thing that I wanted in return. And do you find that people probably yearn for human connection more than anything?
Absolutely. I think it's something that's deeply written in our DNA. Like we're pack animals. People are not meant to exist in isolation. Like
Yeah.
one of the first things that we need when we're born is physical touch, right? And it lets us know that we're lovable, that we're valuable, and just we need proximity to other people just to know, like, okay, I have someone I could call, I have someone I could go be with, I have someone that I could just sit in a room with, I have someone that could go with me to this place, right? And there's definitely beauty in being alone and being able to enjoy your own company.
Mhm.
But I always talk to my patients about balance, and balance is that ever so elusive thing, right? That because you can't maintain balance, we end up shifting one way or another, but we want to try to move towards it. So yeah, absolutely, we definitely need connection.
Yeah, I found that even myself going through different times in my life and whatnot, and now that I'm 35 and I can look back, I see how important certain people were to me at certain times in my life, and how important that human connection is, even if they're not even there at this time. Um, and these are things that I start to open my eyes to now as I get older. And it's interesting because you come across people now. My personal opinion is that that's what everybody's yearning for. That's what everybody really wants out of this life, is love and somebody else to love, whether it's a friend, a wife, a husband, something. I don't really believe that people want to be alone. I don't believe that. I think that that's more of a defense mechanism. That's more trauma oriented and whatnot. Now, as you went through the DCF thing, obviously that's working with government. I'm sure that was a more of a stressful factor on certain times for you, because I've dealt with it as well. Being a cop and still trying to help, but you're still controlled and restricted in many aspects. So now you decide at some point you're going to get out of that field and go and start your own. Now, what entailed that?
Yeah, so basically what happened is through that the connections I was making with people, I started to really listen to their stories and started to, I realized that they would open up to me and they would get to this place that we, like as a therapist, you really want to get to with someone where they're saying, what do you think? Can you help me?
Mhm.
Rather than, because if, let's say me and you were talking and you came to me and you're like, oh yeah, I had this problem at work. And some people's temptation is to immediately be like, well, you should do this, this, and this,
Yeah.
right? But you're not open at that point, right? You haven't asked for my opinion. You don't want anything from me besides a listening ear,
Mhm.
right? So once there's that opening, then you could proceed. And I realized I didn't have as much opportunity as I really wanted, because my hands were tied with the red tape of bureaucracy. And I was just, there were many decisions that were made that I disagreed with fundamentally at my core, right? And I felt like I wasn't able to value people as people. They were cases. So as appreciative as I was for the opportunity to work there, I knew that I wanted more. And I began to just start to dream and imagine, like, I could be a therapist. I've seen many therapists across the span of my life, many terrible therapists and a few good ones. And I decided that I could be one of those good ones, and so went to get my master's while working full time, and that was that was a really hard process. And this was also while I had my first child, so my wife was functionally a single parent for about a year. And while I worked full time, went to school full time, did an internship full time, and yeah, and then once I got my graduate degree, I started also working semi full time at a practice, just getting my hours, and got the feel for like, okay, like I'm actually doing therapy now. I was actually working with people in the way I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, the supervisor was very, um, they let me be very autonomous while still giving me a lot of direction and overseeing me. And it just really gave me an opportunity to grow as a therapist. And then I made the kind of exciting and terrifying step of going out on my own, quitting my comfortable, state job with a pension and excellent pay and benefits, to go open my own practice with none of that and become self-employed and have no safety net. And my wife supported me, and took the plunge, and very quickly became successful, which I'm so grateful for, to the point now where I have 2 employees, and have a growing group practice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's great.
it's been
I see
really
you're
incredible.
doing I see you're doing really well with that. Like I said, I like the website. And one thing I wanted to kind of mention that I see here that was that's pretty interesting to me, is something on your website that says, I see mental health as a boat on an ocean. There are times when the sun is shining, wind in your sails, and these are the times of peace. Yet so many of us are lost at sea or stuck in a storm with no way out. When I read that, I resonated to that so much because I've been there at times. I think everybody has. My personal opinion is this. Um, I think everybody in society, almost everybody, has some sort of anxiety. And I think when it comes to depression and things of those nature, maybe not everybody will go through those times, but I think that a lot of people at some point goes through a period of time where they have some sort of depression as well. So that resonates that, we're basically living in this beautiful world. And there's times where we feel really well about ourselves and really good about it. And then there's times that we don't. And there's a lot of obstacles, a lot of negativity around us. How do we get through all that? We're not taught this stuff in life. And I think that's the biggest problem is we're not taught in school how to deal with stress, how to handle our thoughts and all these things. And I'm a big believer that a lot of who we are as adults comes from our childhood, parents, things of that nature. You as a counselor now and a therapist now, working with people that are coming to you, do you find that now are people pretty open when they're coming to you about wanting help?
Yeah, I find for the most part, people are pretty open. I mean, there's definitely a spectrum, right? There's some people that come in, and you really have to play the game of 100 questions.
Yeah.
I definitely have people who are like, can you just ask me questions, because it's hard for me to talk about this stuff, and it kind of gives them a framework to answer.
Hmm.
But I find that pretty quickly goes away as we establish a relationship. Then
Right.
it starts to flow. There's other people that come in and just start spilling, right? And they're ready. But I find, and this is one of the reasons why I tend to prefer to work with kind of older teens and adults, is they're choosing to come to therapy,
Right.
right? It's a choice. It's not, a 10-year-old whose mom is like, you're out of control, you have to go to therapy,
Yeah.
and you can work with those people. And I do, and we do it at my practice.
Yeah.
It's just, they're not quite as open, right? And you have to
Yeah.
convince them that this is something good.
My
As
my
yeah.
my question in regards to that, when you working with children, is this: do you think that a child who goes to therapy, like their parent having them go to therapy at a young age, which might be necessary for whatever reason, do you think that might give them like a bad taste in their mouth down the road as an adult to want to do it again when necessary?
Yeah, I think it definitely can, and it depends on how it unfolds. If it's this, because it's really important that we listen to our kids. Like they have their own boundaries, and sometimes as parents and adults, and I'm guilty of this, we could ignore their boundaries, right? Like, I really don't want to eat those peas. And it's like, you're going to eat those peas, right? And we could get into this tug of war. But like, as an adult, if you came over for dinner and I served you peas and you said, sorry, man, I don't really eat peas. I'm like, no, you're going to eat those peas, right? Like, you're going to get upset and you're going to feel disrespected and you're not going to feel valued ultimately at your core because I'm trying to impose something on you. And we could do that with kids, and it could very much happen with therapy. But there are instances in which there's a severe case and you can't just ignore it, right? A lot of our systems at play will just say, your child needs therapy. Court will order therapy, DCF will order therapy. And in those situations, I really think it's important for the parents to be engaged in the therapy as well. They need to be there in the session, doing the work, learning the skills as well. Because realistically, it's an hour a week that a therapist is going to spend with your kid, maybe two, if you're lucky. But how much more is the parent spending with that child, right? And there's been many times that I've seen we could do really good work in a session, and then it could be undone at home, because mom, dad, caregiver gets dysregulated and just brings the kid back to that place they were before. So it really needs to be a tandem process.
Right.
And I think it's important that as parents, we model that for our kids too.
Yeah.
Right. Like, hey, this is not just for you. This is for us. Right. And they're much more likely to engage and probably have a much less sour taste in their mouth.
Right. Yeah. I think that, like I said, I think a lot of people in their personalities as they get older and become adults have a lot to do with whatever trauma occurred in their childhood or how their parenting was. And I see that more and more and more everywhere I go, the more deep I get into with people. And now this creates a wide range of issues, multiple different types of disorders, such as narcissism, sociopaths, psychopaths, borderline personalities. I would even say to a certain extent, even though this isn't really dictated as a mental illness disorder, codependency issues. So do you, from what I read on your site, you kind of actually specialize in these type of personalities. How often are you coming across this?
So I suppose it's a complicated answer. So what I find is that there's a root of trauma in a lot of those things that you mentioned, right? And I come across them quite often. And really, a personality disorder is more kind of like a clustering of ways to manage really big and painful feelings, right? That some of them are painful feelings from when the trauma occurred. Some of them are painful feelings that occurred from certain behaviors, right, that the person learned. Like, let's say someone learns to just scream every time they're angry, over anything, right? What they're going to do is they're going to push people away, and then they're going to feel really sad that they don't have anyone. So it kind of becomes a vicious cycle. Personality disorders are a clustering of behaviors, that are basically trauma reactions. So it comes up quite often. When it comes to the way that I practice, what I try to stay away from are labels, diagnoses. I mean, in some ways my hands are tied because insurance companies require them, but I don't want to pathologize, someone, meaning that, telling them that there's something wrong with them, they're abnormal, right? Most people that come to me know that their life is not going the way they want it to, right? And most of the time, a label can make them feel worse. I've had plenty of patients who come to me and they're like, "Well, I've been diagnosed as borderline," and I said, "Okay, that could make sense, and we could look at the criteria and say, yeah, you qualify for that diagnosis." And oftentimes, I tell those people, don't tell people you're borderline. Don't share that with anyone, right? Because unless you're telling someone who's informed, and understands how that kind of personality unfolds, they're going to go with a stigma that they saw on TV, in a movie, right? And they're not going to really understand that person. They're going to think, oh, this person's crazy. This person's trying to kill themselves all the time. I don't want anything to do with them.
Right.
And it immediately is like, this is who I am, when it's not. It's only a component of who that person is. So a lot of my work centers around that, helping someone to find who they are, be their authentic self, kind of
When you
on a,
say that, which is interesting because I see a lot of these people with these personality disorders, they feel unworthy. They don't feel that they have a sense of self.
exactly. Yeah. That's part of experiencing trauma, complex trauma, which is multiple traumatic scenarios in your life, is you kind of lose who you are. There's a
Hmm.
disconnection, there's a shutting off, and could almost be like this autopilot going through life and trying to pick up. It's kind of like, I don't know, like a hermit crab, like always trying to find a new shell to put on,
Hmm.
right? And it's like, but it never quite fits. So really having to go back and deal with these really painful emotions or these wounds can help to start to activate like who you are at your core. And it really is a beautiful process. But yeah, it's most people in these situations, and I don't want to say all because I haven't met everyone, right? But people that I've encountered, they lack a sense of self.
Right. Um, and that obviously creates a multitude of issues because when you can't figure out who you are as a person, a lot
Mhm.
of these people, like you said, they have suicidal tendencies or whatever, or they try to fit in, or they try to be something they're not. When you're living life like that, how does that affect relationships with other people? How are these people really going through life and connecting? Do they ever really connect with people, or are they not? How does this go about?
Yeah, I think it presents a particular challenge for connection. Connection can exist, and a lot of times that connection is shallow. It's not kind of long-standing, and it's not particularly satisfying,
Mhm.
because in a lot of these situations, um, let's say for instance, someone who when they were young, someone they were supposed to trust and was supposed to keep them safe and treated them really nice, actually perpetrated on them. So then they start to associate kindness with danger,
Mhm.
right? Connection and attempts for love as red flags, because that person, they used to hug me all the time and then they did this to me,
Mhm.
right? So then those things can become triggers, right? Those things that were once pure and going to be, indicative of love become like, oh, no, 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 it's going to happen again, right? And it's almost like you get back into that mindset of when it happened before.
Right.
So really it keeps a lot of people at arm's length. And then conversely, there's this impulse on the inside that it's like, I want to be loved. I want to be loved. There's a really good book. I forget who it's by, but it's called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me.
Yeah, yeah. I keep hearing about that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Keep hearing
Um,
about that.
and it talks a little bit about, personality disorder and how trauma has, caused this person to get to this place. Because a lot of times when we meet someone who would qualify for a personality disorder diagnosis, we're like, whoa, you're a lot to deal with, and it might just be easier to not deal with you, which
Hmm.
is quite sad, right?
Yeah.
Because really what that person needs is connection
Right.
to help them heal. So like I said before, a lot of these can become vicious cycles
Yep.
unless you do something to disrupt.
Yeah, and I mean, I think anybody that has dealt with anybody like this, it's hard because you look at these people and then you might like say it's a significant other, it's a family member, who whatever it is. It's hard if you are not one of these people and you are not, you know, have a personality disorder and you are able to empathize and love and care. You often get really intertwined with somebody like that because you have such a care for them and you do sympathize with what they went through, like you can understand, but at the same time you can't understand. It's very hard unless you are doing the work with them, or they accept that this is also something that they understand is going on with them as well. Otherwise there's a lot of acting out, there's a lot of what seems to be like selfishness and mean behavior, which is really, from what I dictate, not really meant towards you. It is, but it's really just them mirroring a lot of their pain inside, at whatever that trauma was before.
Absolutely.
So a lot of this stuff becomes very hard for significant others to deal with, and this and that, and it becomes that vicious cycle. Um, are these people? Because, like you said, it's really like they're craving love. They want that love, but they're afraid of it. The fear of abandonment. So they're constantly pushing you away, but still wanting you there. Um, is it possible to really like live life and be in relationships like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible in the very fact that so many people do it, right?
Yeah,
It's I would argue, is it satisfying? I would say it's really not satisfying. It's kind of in a lot of ways like you don't get to experience the fullness of life,
right,
right? You don't get to know like what is possible. In a lot of ways, I think many of my patients that have kind of fallen into these categories, they don't know what a safe person is, and they don't know how to recognize a safe person, and they often will gravitate towards people who are um, not so safe,
right,
right? That are going to be more turbulent, and I've had patients tell me like, well, I don't want to be with someone who's normal because then I'm going to be the problem. Then all my issues are going to come and be in the forefront,
right.
right? And it's like, so, you know, there's definitely with trauma, there's a kind of undervaluing of self-worth, right? Like,
Yeah,
well, yeah, kind of, this is what I deserve,
right,
right?
right.
And people don't always come out and say that, but it's kind of portrayed in their behavior, right? Like, um, and sometimes I want to shake people and like be like, I see who you are and I see what you deserve, and you deserve to be loved and to be cared for and to be safe, right? But that doesn't work,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
at best people would say, oh, thanks, those are nice words, thank you,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
They
And
need to learn to believe that.
it often seems like those type of people from that have these personality issues and these self-worth issues tend to, if they are in a relationship, they tend to kind of almost at some point ignore, like, just you're there just for specific reasons, and now they need that attention and validation from everywhere else. They need other people to tell them that they look pretty, or they need other people to say nice things to them to make them feel better, and that often tears apart the connectiveness that you thought you've had with that individual in the beginning. Obviously, these people have these phases of idolization, devaluation, and then discarding and splitting personality, the way they look at you, black and white, things of that nature. Um, it's very, very interesting, very hard to deal with if you ever dealt with people like this, because you are really trying hard to make them realize how much you care and how much you really do love them. And it almost seems as if they're just, it's like they want it, but they're so afraid of it. And every almost like every chance they get at some point, they run from that. Do you see people running from their lives constantly?
Yeah, what I kind of see is some people have called it like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, no one's ever going to love me, so and then they'll push everyone away,
Yeah,
and it's like, well, then there's no opportunity for someone to love you.
right,
And what I find is sometimes it can feel safer to be in control of when that pain happens rather than for it to be surprising,
yeah,
right? And why a lot of times in people who carry a great deal of trauma, and everyone's different, all these things, they fall on a spectrum of intensity and different manifestations. So it's hard for me to like really get with the DSM, which is the kind of big book of diagnoses.
mhm,
It's hard for me to be like, yep, that's that person, because people don't fit into boxes, right? We're
right,
like abstract forms. But anyways, yeah, there's this pushing away of people, and it's like, they don't get to experience the fullness,
yeah. You
it's
think
it's
it's
really hard to see.
you think it's a lot of like, I see a lot of these people almost like, there's a lot of blaming, there's a lot of lack of responsibility, there's a lot of self-sabotage behavior, impulsive behavior, almost things that is obviously detrimental to a lifestyle or a relationship, things that they will do that will tear a lot of things apart, which is obvious sabotaging to try to push that person away or make themselves feel good at that moment. Um, but it seems like a lot of these people have impulsive behavior and they run to a lot of negative things. Almost like, it could be either negative people, it could be sexual type things, it could be financial impulsations. They have a lot of like just randomly very impulse decision making.
Yeah.
What comes from that? Why are they doing these things?
Well, I guess I think of this kind of metaphor. So imagine that your arm is on fire. You know, you're going to be in excruciating pain, and you're going to run towards whatever liquid-like substance you could find, even if it turns out to be, a pot of oil, right? And that's going to make it worse. But you just want the pain to go away, right? And this happens across the board. I mean, impulsive behavior often is panicked, right? It's like, I'm hurting so bad, I need this hurt to stop, and that's what ends up leading people to do or make really destructive choices. And then even more so when it works a little bit, right? A lot of things we do to cope with pain, they work in the moment, but have long-term consequences.
Right.
Right. And so, this is across the board that every person I've met has made choices like this, both personal and professional, these kind of impulsive, kind of like numbing, how do I make this pain go away, and just make this choice, whether it be food or drugs or alcohol or sex or, shopping. It's just, I want this to stop, so I'm going to make it stop. Oh, this works, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Um,
But it never really stops. It always comes back.
it
It
doesn't.
almost seems like it's like that impulsive decision makes them feel good for the moment, and then the second it's done, they feel almost a lot more regret. So it's either they continue with the negative behavior to keep feeling better, which will just continue downhill, or they have to go back to that regret feeling of feeling, what they
Yeah,
did. Um,
very much so.
yeah,
Very much.
definitely a cycle there. Now let's get into something that I think is a very hot topic for mental health nowadays and our generation, which is social media. I think that especially with personality disorders such as this, and just in general, you could be just a normal person that could just fall into this social media world, and that can bring anxiety, depression, and things of that nature. I see a lot of people looking at this social media, using it for attention, using it for dating, using it for any type of feel that they can get to make themselves feel better. But at the same time, it's also creating this fantasy world of depression. I feel like they're looking at people's lives out here that obvious people are faking or not being truthful about, and they're sitting there thinking that this is great, and that other people are living these lavish lives, and then they start to feel that their life is not worthy. They're not doing anything with their life.
Yeah.
Have you in your practice, obviously, I don't know if you've dealt with people like that. That would be interesting to see if anybody has had issues such as that you've come across, as well as, what's your opinion on social media in this generation and mental health?
Yeah. So social media is kind of like a double-edged sword. I think it's in so many ways it's a beautiful thing, um, because it allows people to be connected. It allows information to be shared very quickly. Um, there's a place to kind of archive memories and to have nostalgia and to reminisce, and like Facebook, I don't know if they still have it. They have this thing called Time Hop, and it was something from like 10 years ago would come up, and it's like, oh wow, I remember that concert. I remember that friend, or oh, there's my relative who passed away. Like, it's a nice, like it's warming, to your soul. And then on the other side, as connected as it makes us disconnected. How many people do you see walking around, or at the grocery store, or sitting at the dinner table, or even at a concert, where they're not present? They have their phone and they're looking down at it. So many times I've been to concerts, and it's like, I'm very much about being present, and just watching it and like mentally recording it. But you see people with their phones up like this, like making sure the video on their phone looks good when the real thing is in front of them.
Yeah.
Right. So as much as it connects us, it disconnects us. And it also, unfortunately, gives us a platform to speak and behave in a way that we probably wouldn't in person. Because if you have to look into someone's eyes and tell them, hey, you look gross and you're nasty and everyone hates you, there's a much there's a greater likelihood of you having an empathy response and feeling remorse and guilt than if you just type it, post it, and walk away. Right. Like, you just kind of set it and forget it on social media. So I find that there's a tremendous increase in cruelty, and this kind of flagrant, putting out of opinions, right? It's like everyone has a, I think people, what is my dad always said, opinions are like butts. Everyone has one and they all stink. So, I'm just like, well, not everyone's opinion needs to be out there, right? I mean, and especially if you don't really care about a topic and you're just chiming in to chime in, I mean, how helpful is that? And I think my biggest thing now that I see is there's a lot of arguments and debates, but there's no dialogue, right? Like an argument or a debate, there's a winner and there's a loser, right? And if you and I got into a conversation, let's say you thought, the car should be blue and I said it should be red, and I convince you logically why it should be red. At the end of the day, you're just conceding. You don't actually think it should be red, right? You're just like, well, I have nothing else to say, right? But you still in your heart think it should be blue. So a dialogue is us exchanging back and forth, and then we walk away and we both consider what the other person said, and maybe can shift our opinion, but we don't have to, so, but we live in this world now where it's like, you need to choose a side.
There's no understanding. There's no understanding.
Exactly. And and that's disconnection, right? And that's because connection is, okay, like I see where you're coming from, and we could still exist in this same space with different opinions,
right?
Because I value you. Like, you're more than just that thing that you have this opinion about. And there's so much division, and it's very sad for me to see. So
you see people,
social media, good and bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel the same. I mean, I think it's great for business. It's been great for, families to reconnect, like you said, and all these other things. But I think that, it's bringing a lot of fantasy to people. It's bringing a lot of negative to people. It's bringing, especially with people that already have mental illness issues or undiagnosed issues, self-esteem issues, depression issues, whatever it is. This is a place where the second they feel poorly, they can run to it and get satisfaction from somebody, something, some random person, whatever it is. And that will make them feel better. Or they could post a picture that makes them feel better, get likes, get attention. And it's a lot of fakeness going on. A lot of people just looking for attention and to feel rather than to interact.
Yeah. And I found that social media in a lot of ways is like, it's like a diary. I mean, people just put their stuff out there and they look for validation or they look for challenge. And really, I think a lot of statuses that are posted would be better off in a journal, and process that with yourself, process that with your friends, just, because it's safer that way. It's safer for the person and it's safer for the audience too. Because a lot of people's personal thoughts can be painful and hurtful. They're entitled to them. Right? They belong to them. They're theirs. They're not right or wrong. But putting it out there on a mass forum, it could be really painful. Right. So I mean, I tend to encourage, especially my younger patients. Why don't you journal? Oh, I don't like to write. And I was like, well, you're posting, you're snapping all the time. You're tweeting. You have Instagram posts. I mean, so many times I see that people will put like a post on Snapchat. It's like, in a bad mood, leave me alone. And then they're like crying in the picture. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, well, you snapped at the 10 people just now.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, are you really feeling that way, or are you looking for the sympathy, the attention? You just want that. I find this. Here's what I find. That, and I've had to do this for myself, and I don't think enough people are doing this in their life. Whether you're feeling happy, sad, there needs to be reflection on your life, whether it's reflection on the past, the present, your future, all these things. And you need to do that yourself. You can have people in your life that you can vent to and kind of get a little bit of information, but that should stay within. That there should be a small circle of that. Now, I feel like if you take, like when you're talking about journaling, there should be times throughout your day. I feel like I try to do this all day long. My mind really doesn't shut off, but I'm always thinking about what I need to do to better my life, better myself, better the people I love. I'm not, as much as I'm on social media and I see what's going on in here, I'm not utilizing it for my emotions. And I think that's a big problem for some people. And for you to really step up and level up in life, especially when going through certain shit in your life, you have to take a step back, and there has to be an isolation period, I feel like, where you look at yourself. And you can say, why am I doing this? You know, what do I really love? What do I really care about? What do I really want? Um, who really is the problem, or what really is the problem? How do I fix that problem? And really dissect all these things. And when you're not doing that and not slowing down and taking that time by yourself to really answer these questions and using the proper resources such as reading, articles, therapy, whatever it is, and you're running to a social media to just post something and get, you know, 100 probably superficial comments that really don't mean anything more than whatever that person wants it to mean, you are not making any progress. So my personal opinion is that there needs to be a lot of time for you to reflect on your life, slow down, take some time away from the hecticness of life, what's going on, and the stress, and just sit down and really say, what do I want? What do I need? What do I need out of my loved ones, want out of my loved ones? How can I care more for people? What really matters? I had to get to that point, and that's partially why this podcast was born, the For the Love podcast, because I've, in my life, even throughout my career, my hard times, all those things, I was grateful enough to have a brain to really say, like, okay, I need to figure things out. When some people don't want to do that, they want to push all their emotions and problems and issues off and not do that. Luckily, I did that. Sometimes it doesn't feel good to do it. You have to go through pain a lot of times to do it, to learn those lessons. But that's what, for me, brought purpose to my life, to realize what matters most. And what matters most, I feel, in life is love, care, and compassion, and human connection. And when you can gain all these things within yourself, it's really empowering, and it really brings a sense of clarity.
Very much, yeah.
So I just wanted to thank you for coming on. This is episode 33, Shane. Maybe in the future we can reconnect, have another episode. Yeah, this is something that I think is probably one of the most important things in life for people to understand and realize, because I feel that as we get older, we get worse if we are not doing the proper things to make us feel good. And you're there for people. North Haven, Anchor Soul Counseling. Check out the website. Shane, I will say this. I like your style. I think that a lot of people are afraid to go to therapy and stuff like that because they feel it's going to be hard to find somebody to connect to their personality and be open-minded and understanding and not be dictated or feel like they are being lectured and told what to do and all these things. And I like that your style is pretty open-minded, and you seem like a pretty fairly understanding and free person. And I think that that's something that when you can be in touch with yourself and understand that being free and realizing that there's a ton of personalities out there, and not everybody's is the same as yours, then you can really connect with people in the proper way. So it seems like you're doing that, man. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So episode 33 of the For the Love podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Check out the website for some apparel. Shane, have a good day. If you guys want to check them out, go to the website. And listen, anybody that feels like they are down, feels like they need to understand or learn more about their life, do not be afraid to go talk to somebody. It is something that will probably open you up to really have a life. So do that. If you need Shane's help, definitely go check him out. Shane, take care. Have a peaceful day.
Yeah.
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. You got a dream. You got to protect it. You want something, go get it. Period.